Hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, the one and only dreaded DM of the RPG community. Yes, thank you very much for popping on in with myself and an entourage that is far more brilliant than myself as we talk about a subject all week long. And today's subject is pandemics. And we talk about it all week. We talked about it for Monster Monday and Crunch Time Tuesday, and today on World Building Wednesday. Yeah, world building. We get to discuss, we get to build ourselves, or maybe even, I don't know if building is the case, maybe destroy, take down a setting where whatever subject we're talking about is the thing that has shaped the world for good or bad. And in the tabletop role playing community, it's quite often it's quite a world building is a hobby unto itself, much like miniatures and game design and whatnot. And there are many people who just love to create worlds and extrapolate some of the ramifications of shifting and changing a world. So our subject for today, as I said before, is about pandemics and shifting it slightly away from, in the same family though, but away from just using diseases, some kind of infestation or infection or viral outbreak or some kind of bacteria or something. Pandemic is something that stretches far larger and wider than the player characters could ever encounter it. Now, a pandemic doesn't necessarily need to encapsulate a globe, but it should, again, extend much farther than the player characters could ever travel to the ends of whatever region they are in, such as there are many epidemics that have happened, like I'll bring up the Black Plague or something, that may be regionally bounded, but again, it's far beyond what the player characters will ever see, and that kind of counts in there as far as tabletop role playing goes, not the scientific explanation of said thing. Now, when most role playing games are extremely humanocentric, they are centered around mankind, and a lot of times because of that, it's based on what we have experiences with, and we think of things developing through that particular lens. But we often don't consider the outliers, the alien aspects of our worlds when it comes to pandemics. For example, are there diseases that only affect particular races? Are there side effects that happen to particular races in your world, especially in fantasy? Are there in now we've probably seen this many times with novelizations and things, even some movies and television where the elves are afflicted by some kind of condition, but the humans are not. While unfair in some sort of cases when it comes to player characters, story wise, that may be a thing, right? It's a perfectly good reason as to why maybe a particular race doesn't exist on your world any longer. We all have the fallen empire of the people, the forgotten people, and no one knows what they look like, or there are no physical manifestations of those people living today, but maybe they looked like some of the statues or pictures and artwork or such. And maybe this disease has been revealed later on. So also, a lot of the monsters, we have to have a lot of conflict in our role-playing games, right? Big chunks of those books are made with combat. How does it affect the antagonists in your world? Dragons and goblinoid hordes and undead and fiendish sources and all those kind of things. Plants, even giants. Do they get sick? Can humans catch a giant disease? Is it specified just for them? So considering those things as well, and then and how they react, food sources. Your owlbears out there who are do they suffer harm eating someone who's been afflicted by this, I don't know, plague of darkness that's sweeping across the countryside and such? Has this increased conflict amongst, say, particular regions where the owlbears are crossing into areas they normally wouldn't? And then, of course, we have the human politics. And this is where we come. I feel like this is where the biggest world building elements come from, because we have a lot of examples of this, even till today, of how people act and react when it comes to plagues and pandemics and things of that nature. And one of the things, of course, is that when you start seeing people, especially a disease that kills people off, and that's usually our default, purpose, right? Someone catches something, they suffer quite a bit, and then they die, and there's no cure for it, and very little hospice care, palliative care. Polarity is sarcastic. Like, yeah, people act exactly the same. Yeah, just different weather, different scenarios, same behavior, right? And so you're going to get a lot of, and this usually comes with any apocalyptic event, right? You're going to get a lot of people who are want to take advantage of everyone's emotional state, because as long as your emotions are running high, what do they say? You should never make you should never make life-changing decisions ever when you are emotionally charged. Yet people who want to take advantage love your emotions. They want you to be happy or sad or fearful or jealous or any of those things. And fear is a great motivator, right? If you can turn the dials, fan the flames, increase fear, you can get away with a lot of things. You're going to have the people selling on the street corners, the people that sell the home remedies that happen to make you immune to such diseases, and you're going to have the soapbox preachers that just happen to have a direct line to the gods that will protect you when the disease ravages everyone, because of course the disease is humanity's fault, and you have to perform, and they come up with a number of different trials or behaviors or thought processes that will make you immune to such a thing. Others will claim that there's been a prophecy of said things happening. Hey, look how vague this prophecy was. Now today is when everything fits together, right? And in a fantasy world, any of those things could actually be true. Any or all of them could be true. Does the human or humanoid population, the main humanocentric population, do they know whether this is true or not, or are they just going on pure instinct? Also, when people start getting sick, you get enough people sick, they exponentially start to drain the resources of the population, right? Not only are those people not contributing to the population, whether it is processing food or being, creating shelter and law and order and all the jobs that these people normally would be doing, they are now sick, and their family and friends now distracted. And even if they are at work, are they really at work? Not really. Their mind's somewhere else. They are now spending their money and their time and energy and resources to care for their sick one. And once that starts to break down, one person sick can affect 2, 3, 5, 10 other individuals who should be doing their jobs. And then as that spreads, it starts to increase. Human beings and their, productivity starts to go down. The night's watch isn't as effective. People in there and watching their money isn't as effective. Investment starts to shrivel up. People start snatching things off of shelves because they know they'll need it for the upcoming air quote storm that's ravaging the countryside, and of course they don't want to be hanging around everyone, so they want to get as many eggs and milk and bread and stealing things, and eventually prices start reaching sky high, and so on and so forth, like any kind of apocalyptic event. And throwing the PCs into an event where that happens, right, where you foreshadow this event maybe happening on the edges of the horizon, and then as things come up, they staying in the inn becomes more expensive. They start seeing people taking their sheets outside and burning them. They see people wrapping scarves around their mouths, or wearing storm cloaks wherever they go, or using kind of genuflecting with some kind of religious iconography on their body, or wearing particular colors that are emblematic of a pantheon of gods, or so on and so forth, right? Uh, that kind of thing. You're funny, Omen. Deadman says, Drugs and Remedies or Objectionable Advertisement Act of 1954. The Drugs and Magic Remedies Act of 1954 is an act of the Parliament of India which controls advertising of drugs in India. It prohibits advertisements of drugs and remedies that claim to have magical properties, and makes doing so a cognizable there we go. A cognizable offense. And that would include things like, how many times have we've seen where people were like selling, snake oil. I was going to say snake oil. The people selling snake oil, right? That is the generalization for people who are trying to sell something that's a remedy for a thing. Snake oil is a euphemism for deceptive marketing and healthcare fraud. It refers to the petroleum-based mineral oil, or snake oil, that used to be sold as a cure-all elixir for many kinds of physiological problems. Many 19th century United States and 18th century European. It goes on, but the snake oil, I believe it was lots of the precursor to soda. Or soda pop, or pop here in the United States was one of those. I believe also root beer, sassafras, I think was a precursor to that as well. And ginger, what used to be a snake oil thing, where, hey, go ahead and buy this. And here's the thing, right? The brilliance of snake oil salesmen is that they price and make available something that Plural's like, everybody's getting really into gin and tonic. Yep. The brilliance of it is that they make it a value that a person decides, even if this doesn't work, given a 5% chance, 10% chance that this will work, I'll spend the money on the thing anyway, right? And so even if you're out of your money, it's a low enough cost where you go, oh, it's stupid, but you don't want to murder the person, right? And that's where you have like the only seen on television kind of idea, where some people will try to like sell a thing and then create a problem that thing solves, even though it was never a problem before. And so you have those snake oil salesmen. Now, some of the irony of that might be that there might be some snake oil salesmen, or at least perceived that way, that might actually be true, or at least have some truism with it, much like the selling of ginger ale. And ginger actually has a medicinal effect, just not the effect that they claim that it did, right? And of course, there's always something that's taken from some exotic, far-off place it's got a hint of reality to it, but isn't, so they can claim that there's some kind of like truism to it. So yeah, of course there's that. And then so you have the pseudoscience, you have the pseudo-religious, the people that are like walking around with, claiming they have a direct 5G line to the gods, and if you just do these things because I'm getting direct messages from the gods. If you don't believe me, the gods will harm you, and these are the end times, and you should follow me and believe in me. And then people look around, and of course, again, well, the population on the other side of the mountain range, they sure did die off. I wonder why. Well, they were in league with the mountain dwarves or something like that. Like, oh, that's true. That's true. They lived near the mountains and there were mountain dwarves there. That's got to be true. And so that a lot of that happens. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have a setting filled with like lies and deceit, but it sure can be fun. Yeah, Owen's like problems that were never problems. I remember. Yeah, I remember a story of something like that in Philippine folklore. Yeah, there's always the adage was of is find a need and fill it, and then the other adage is create a need and then find a way to solve that need when it wasn't a problem in the first place, right? So yeah, that's very much a thing. Now, the other part about a pandemic, though, is that you have this this triangle of pressure that's happening in the world, making people think and rethink what it is that they're going to do with their lives, and that could have an extremely significant aspect on player characters and what they want to do. Maybe they've gone to the docks and hired a shipwright or something, or a captain and his crew to have them sail across the narrow sea. And now, there's like 18 boats, docked in the port, and all of them are like, yeah, we can't sail because, not only are there, I don't know, privateers out in the water that are going to take our stuff, but they're not letting us dock on the other side, and we're not taking our crew out unless we get paid a certain amount of money. It's not worth it for us to be just sitting here losing money and being told that we have to be in dry dock, right? And so the player characters may absolutely positively need to, I don't know, solve this pandemic, however it's happening, whether it's like a fiendish curse or a biological, something's expanding biologically, but they can't get to where they need to go. Or there are protests in the streets. There are religious fanatics going door to door. There are guards that are corralling people into like enclaves because they need to keep the infected away from everyone else. And of course, while all this is happening, each person motivated by their own things, of course they feel that they're correct, right? There's no way that they're wrong when they start hurting people who, have the sniffles and a slight cough into pits and then setting them on fire, or like, or at least having them starve out, or giving them the minimal amounts of care when there are innocent people in there who may or may not be infected. And then, of course, we have to consider, especially in like a fantasy realm, how good is medicine in the first place. Now, I can hear some of you going like, well, yeah, but DBJ, but you didn't mention remove curse or remove disease or cure poison or whatever the case may be, right? You're not mentioning those magical effects. And I contend to you, maybe that might even be the motivation for why people are going crazy in the first place. An example would be, sure, maybe a very small minority of the population is given the arcane ability to heal some of it, but can they heal hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people? Maybe that's seen as a little bit unfair. And the gift of being able to lay on hands to cure someone else might be looked at as something that is very, very arrogant, or based on status, or something that's like a randomization, like, oh, fine, you get to cure 5 people today. What about, the hundreds of people? What about my family even? I gave your religious organization lots of coin. What about me? What about mine? and the player character going like, well, I ran out of spell slots doesn't really cut it, right? When your family's suffering and you randomly and or picked based on your own parameters which people can be healed or not healed. And that, I think, would be kind of a cool thing. Like, hey, maybe the healers in the world are the ones that are hated the most because they're hoarding there's perceived hoarding of their magical abilities that's not stretched out to the rest of the population, right? Um, yeah, Deadman says Borderlands 3's third DLC had an NPC, Doc Stanley, who makes Doc Stanley's Miracle Elixir. Yeah, there's all Doc Stanley sounds like a perfect day, right? Like these wandering like food cart salesmen that are like, yep, I can make a thing that'll cure you up. And especially a lot of this comes from, for those who are not familiar with it, like the Wild West, the snake oil ointment. Yep, even the post here in the Discord, like Clark Stanley snake oil liniment, and selling it to the population, and maybe even paying a couple of people in the crowd to co-sign whatever you're talking about. Like, I've got this snake oil, and just taking 3 sips a day will cure you of everything. And someone's in the group is like, yeah, that's right. It sure is. It's like those infomercials, right? On television, and that is very much that's a very well-known trope amongst like cowboy western type stories. Deadlands, I'm sure, has some pretty I'll say like probably hag-like individuals that are selling these elixirs and stuff. Like, yeah, just take one sip and you're mine, right? And then of course, when all this is happening, lots and lots of people, not just people, but your NPCs, your monsters, are probably taking advantage of this entire thing. But I think something that we overlook as well are like, what if our adversaries are going through the exact same panic, but of course they don't want to let anyone know about that panic? Those goblinoid hordes. We could talk about the goblinoid hordes. Heck, we did a whole. I guess I'm wrong, because we did a whole week of like Orcs Uprising and WotC's change in how orcs are being used and depicted in role-playing games. But I think I digress, because you know what I'm talking about, where maybe those people living up in the mountains are also suffering, but of course, no true country or power structure is going to admit their weakness. They're not going, unless they are pushed to the very brink of failure and destruction. No one's going to want to admit that their country needs help. They need food. They need assistance. As more and more people become sick, there's very few people to farm and serve the public interest. As the city guard starts to fall off one by one, and their own family start getting sick, of course the city guard's going to leave. The noble family with their well-trained warriors is just like, listen, nobles, you want us to be loyal? We need to get the hell up out of here and let these people, let them stay behind the castle walls and let them suffer and die in their own filth and grime, but we need to get the hell out of here. And that may be a thing. Nobles on the road and monsters that are starving as they interact with them, or even diseased monsters that are half dead as the owlbears, where you could see their bones through their skin and stuff. A lot of times when we have our adversaries, we meet them much like player characters. We meet them at their optimal, dare I say, video game-ish, or at least old style video game-ish element, right? You open up the door, they just happen to be perfectly set right there just for you to fight them, as opposed to being like starving or panicked or blind or injured or in pain or any number of things. Heck, even even begging for help. Those chaotic evil creatures, they want to live too, and until they're nursed back to health and have the opportunity to take advantage of the do-gooders that are helping them, most chaotic evil things are going to have quite a bit of sense when it comes to food and shelter and health and safety, right? Pelor, yeah, piss and ink. Methinks you're making a reference, or at least I'm going to assume you're making a reference of the people in power who definitely will say and do the things that will keep them from suffering the ire of the people below them, right? Their constituents, Hey, we're going to just keep saying things over and over again, so that it placates the population, so that they don't realize just how thin of a tenuous link they have on the power that they hold, because of course the power they hold is um almost invariably linked around how much people believe in what they're doing, right? I mean, nobles only have power because the people say they do. It is an artificial construct. The 5,000 people assembled below the nobles' uh, tower, where there's only like maybe a dozen guards and maybe 5 or 6 noble members of the family, they're pretty much at a severe limitation, unless the population thinks that they have some kind of like divine um, spirituality, or people believe in the caste system that they live in. You know, Deadman brings up the Young Guns TV series from the 80s had a snake oil salesman come through, and the station manager bought one bottle, took a swig, and declared it was whiskey, lavender extract, and olive oil, or something like that. You know what? Most most um most snake oils were made from, like, I'll say, mundane things, like the ginger I was talking about, or like whiskey mixed with something else, like Plura brought up, gin and tonic. Yep, just a little bit, and if it was any good, you'd feel, at least it would make you feel better after you drank some of it, right? You're like, ooh, this medicine's working really good. And it was like, because you're drunk, because you passed out for a couple of hours. Yeah, it worked. It made you forget all about it till you woke back up again. Um, Tesla Ranger says Dr. Oz has come under fire recently with studies that show that only about half of the products he recommended on his show were backed by science. John Oliver tore him apart on Last Week Tonight twice. Yeah, and that's a thing, right? As a pandemic spreads, remember, you when I'm saying you, the people who are trying to live are going to start scraping at the things that allow them to live in the first place, right? It's the downfall, it's the uprising of evil and the downfall of good. You know, it's the knight's order that has brought justice and peace to the realm. And then when the people were like, hey, knights, please bring order and life and justice to our world, and the knight's order's like, we don't have any answers for this, but we also can't tell the people that because they believe in us. So they start coming up with, whether purposefully or not, they start coming up with enemies, right? Well, if we just slaughter the owlbears, that's what's spreading the disease. Yeah, that's it. Owlbears are spreading the disease. We're going to go out and we're going to have a campaign to kill the owlbears. And people are like, yeah. And like, we just need you to support us with, your money, your time, your political influence, and so on and so forth. And like a Dr. Oz, I don't, I haven't seen that, but whatever. I wouldn't put it past anyone. At a certain point, you go, okay, well, what's more important, my integrity, and then I disappear one day, or my popularity and I stay in the public eye, right? And so, what that thing, the term, um, you, the hero, if the hero lives long enough, or the hero can live long enough to see themselves become the villain, is a truism when it comes to like any kind of apocalyptic event where, we see that today, right? We're seeing that today in the political spectrum and the uprising here, on the streets in the United States. There are, one side, the side of, I guess you could call law and order, is like, no, we need to, we're upholding law, we're good, we're just. And then how easy, what does it take for one police officer to cross over that line where they are rationalizing their behavior, no matter how unjust it is, as being just because of the apocalyptic events that are happening around them. And then on the other hand, you have the other group that's like, see, you guys aren't just at all. And you have the other group that's going, see, we need to bring justice and we need to change things to make it right. And how easy is it to convince yourself that what you're saying and doing is right, but at a certain point you cross that line, and then and then what happens when you cross that line? As human beings, do we sit back and go, "Ooh, what, yeah, what I did was wrong. Sorry about that." No, we don't. We don't do that. We don't apologize for our mistakes. We double down on them, right? We When the rest of the population around you is looking at you for your leadership, and you go, do I say, I mean, how many politicians have we ever seen go, you know what, I thought this one way, but sorry guys, I didn't have all the information I needed for this decision, or sorry, I made a mistake, or I really don't know. I'll say in the history of politics, the answer is probably zero. And those make the best adversaries in the world, right? Like the player characters go through the world. Maybe how ironic would it be for like uh, a fiendish monster is like whispering in the ear of like someone who's like, I would do anything. You know how you ask a demon for help, right? Like, I would sell my soul to, and fill in the blank, right? And the demon shows up and it's like, what do you want to do? And they're like, I want to control everyone and bring death and destruction to the people that are my enemies. And the fiend's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Aren't you taking this a little too far? I was just here to give you like a random wish and just make your, take your soul. But you're thinking about wholesale destruction, and those are souls that I want. I don't want you killing those people. I just want them to suffer. Wow, you're evil. It would be funny for human beings to be more evil than the fiends that are like going back to the nine hells. Like, yeah, I don't think we should go through those portals anymore. Talk to the humans. And Asmodeus is like, why not? I just instructed you to go ahead and do that. Like, dude, they're going to be here when they die, and it's going to be a hell of a world for us. Literally, pun intended. So yeah, people rationalize. I mean, heck, we know people rationalize the death and murder of people in the middle of the street. And I don't mean anything that's happened recently. I'm talking about like the murder of women and children and the elderly and all this other kind of stuff, and just shrug it off like, well, see, those people were the others and they don't count. Plur says, I mean, someone would definitely sell their soul to cure a loved one. Absolutely. And then get the disease from their loved one, die, and the demon then gets an ally. Yeah, hells yes. And think about it. How many of us would myself, I'll talk about myself. I consider myself to be a pretty upstanding individual, right? I like to speak up against injustices and things like that. But I mean, I don't know about risking my life. Am I a paladin of some sort, of oath taker or something? No. But when it comes to the people I know, I mean, what would I sacrifice that would affect other people to protect the people I know and love? I don't know. But given that fantasy realms have actual evidence that if you were to do such a thing, you will get an end result on the other end of that, a hell of a lot of people would sell their soul to save their loved one, right? And if their loved one was saved and it happened, how many people would be loyal to that power? Now, of course, when I say loyalty could be anything from, sure, I'll serve you for 101 days out of loyalty because I made a promise. That loyalty could be, you know what? The goodly gods didn't listen to me, but you fiendish power listened to me, and now we're besties. Or it could be, ooh, damn, I made a mistake. I should have never made that deal. Now I got to live with it, right? I mean, all of those actually represent everything that is not just a warlock. I know people love warlocks, but that represents everything from being a paladin to a cleric to a warlock or any of the above, or being afflicted as a sorcerer, any of those class features or things like that, right? Some people double down and go, yeah, I sold my soul. What the hell of it? I did it for the right reasons. F you. Or it could be, well, I sold my soul. I saved my loved one, but I don't want them to see me like this because I'm bringing. I made a mistake and brought far more destruction into the world than I even intended to. But I've got to live with my mistakes, you know. Yeah, and like Pelora says, not even snake oil because it works, but there are other consequences. In a fantasy, I guess we'd have to find other because we've had this problem before, right? Like, what is cannibalism in fantasy? It's like, well, if elves eat dwarves, is that cannibalism, right? We have to find other terminology. So, in fantasy games, like, if the thing that you want, the snake oil, doesn't work as intended, but it does work in another manner, does that mean it's snake oil because it's a lie as intended, but it still has some kind of effect? I don't know. I I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing. Sapiophagy, a new official word. All words are made up, so I guess yes. um, yeah, we'd have to find out something like that. And as a matter of fact, like when it comes to like spreading diseases and things of that nature, um, or the spread of disease, you know, are is it possible for the player characters to be afflicted by something and they have to take or find these different types of like I love hags because something about there's something about hags to me that are really great um dramatic motivators. But anyway, the hags that make the snake oil out in there in their swampy, you know, cabins, because they're always swampy cabins. And you know, does it work? Does it not work? Do the PCs have to, you know, take a remedy each day to not suffer the effects of what's happening to them? Is it like, it is an affliction like we mentioned yesterday? Is it like vampirism where the people who are afflicted are like, this ain't too half bad, and the people who aren't afflicted are like, you need to stay away from me because you're pretty dangerous to everyone else around you. And yes, the disease might give you that pressure that you're gonna, you know, you're better than you are, you're more powerful or something. But in the end, you will die and probably kill the rest of us simply by your mere presence or something. I don't know. I mean, heck, you know, you could very easily reshape or reflavor like a sorceress origin as instead of spell effects, there's like disease and pus and the breath of death, you know, breathing out of your mouth as you use your spell like abilities, but really it's just afflicting other people. And you could just narrate, you could narratively claim that your character is racked by pain, um, or you wake up in night terrors or something like that. As opposed to I read my spell book during my short rest, right? It could be I go over in the corner and begin to vomit and have fluids coming out of different orifices because I'm suffering from a disease. And let's get back into the game, right? Narratively, yeah, you go with that. Heck, how many people have suffered from affliction so much that they really don't feel anything, i.e., they have a lot of hit points, right? Um, yeah, sapiophagy is already a word, Dead Man says. Uh, yeah, if a human eats a human, it's cannibalism. Yeah, if a hobgoblin eats a human, what's that? Uh, and red put justice. Yeah, sapiophagy. If your problem with anthropophagy is that it refers to humans, sapiophagy is perfect for you. It literally means to eat a sentient being. Yeah, that's really what it is. Although I don't, we have to we would have to go out of our way to make it more popularized in the RPG community. But seeing as how I am the self-appointed third pillar-ist, and that really hasn't spread too far and wide, I don't know how successful I'll be in it, but I'll try my best. um, it's a long A. You know me. Yeah, yeah. You know me. Anyway, the squirrel. Well, not really squirrel. It has to do with what we're eating each other. Um, the other thing of things that happen around pandemics are disease vectors, and usually a really good tabletop community discussion. A really good disease has a very intricate and effective disease vector. Usually, the most effective disease vector, of course, is probably airborne. You're just walking around randomly, you breathe it in, and you suffer from it. But we know that a lot of diseases spread through other vectors, and based on those vectors, you can play around a lot with how the player characters and your world acts and reacts to different things. Is it by touch? Is it by sexual congress? Is it by somehow having someone else's bodily fluid that has this disease material entering into your bodily fluid? Is it spread simply like we brought it? I'm going to bring up typhoid Mary again, right? Is it is the disease spread on people's food or drink? Is it spread by other things that become another vector? Like I'm diseased, put it in my blankets, and then those blankets then get other people sick, and that was actually a thing that was used against Native peoples here, indigenous peoples here in the United States, in the newly formed Americas, where hey, you need to wipe some people out, give them disease blankets, right? What's another effect? Using a catapult and trebuchet to launch dead bodies over castle walls to get them to open up the trapping themselves in, because maybe they have months of food and resources, but you want to get people to get the hell out their house, throw some diseases in there and some rot, and that will, and of course rats and things like that spread diseases, mosquitoes and other insect types will spread diseases, and that in and of itself could be the thing that is very traumatic. Like for example, in a game that I'm going to be hosting coming up this Sunday, not sure if I'll broadcast it live, but I will be taping it, putting on a channel. In A Dead Man's Guide to Dragon Grin, there are these things called bleak storms, and things pouring out of the bleak storms are these insects called kites, and they swarm and everything. And so is the world inundated by like swarms of insects that are just like, everyone's like, get inside, get under cover, because it's not just being bit by the damn things, which are stung or whatever, which might be dangerous in and of itself and hurt, but being afflicted by a disease, right? That's one of the tensions brought about by the zombie hordes. Somebody gets bit, drama ensues as the person tries to hide it. Other people see that they've gotten bitten and decide, okay, hey, you're my best friend, but somebody's going to have to decide to put this person out there and put them out their misery. How do we do such a thing? Tension builds, and then the tension boils over, and then something dramatic happens, right? So in this case, like, are there insects spreading around, and even deadly enemies huddled together under shelter because the insect swarms are coming around, and it'll be hours before the insect swarms leave because it's like an insect plague, um, clouds that roam over the landscape, destroying everything in their wake. Are they spread by rats? And it's important to have, like, human beings have bred dogs and cats to get rid of those damn infectious rats that are eating, that are disease spreaders. Is it necessary for the player characters or even to hire rat catchers, or even one or more of the player characters to actually be a rat catcher to keep the rats away? Because, hey, your place is infested with rats. Pretty shortly, you're going to be diseased whether you are or not. And maybe people just assume that your city or your home or you as a people that are surrounded by rats are diseased, right? Um, Yep. Pelor says, yeah, and even just sending sick refugees to your neighbors, right? Yes. Hey, kick the sick people off to the other country. Send them over to the other side of the town. Um, Lock your sick people away. And hey, I'm not sick. And you're like, yeah, a sick person would say they aren't sick, aren't they? Wouldn't they? And you put them on wagons or boats or send the refugees and kick them across the border of your country to go somewhere else. And then what happens when you get a large mobile population, transient population? You get to hide a hell of a lot of things in there. Crime, lots of criminals would hide in there. Sending secret messages, spies can hide in those groups. Um, let's go back to the snake oil and the converts, whether they are true or not. You get to sell a lot of that stuff in that group. Anyone trying to spread like a warlock patron that wants to get a lot of patrons would love to start spreading the word in amongst a transient population that's being moved from place to place. Charlie Squared's like, Ratcatcher could be slang for an adventurer. It sure could. And now that I think about it, in this kind of setting, reskinning, reflavoring your classic, say, 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons character archetypes would be kind of a cool thing if you want to do something a little bit dark, more like Black Plague era, where I'm not a druid or a ranger, but I'm a rat catcher. I'm not a fighter. I'm a person that maybe corrals those plague ridden, right? Like I'm not a sellsword that just goes out there as a mercenary. I'm literally hired to beat people about the head and shoulders to keep the diseased away. Like you could flavor all of your character classes. Like a cleric might literally be a hospitaller or something, right? Yeah, like Charlie says, I'm not a necromancer, I'm a plague master. Yeah, exactly. Tesla's like, rat catching. It's not just a job, it is an adventure. Exactly. I mean, now it doesn't necessarily have to be about catching rats and such, but I could see like a barbarian class might just be somebody that's afflicted with like uh like a rage zombie, right? Like you're not just a barbarian, you have rabies. When you literally go into when you literally use rage, you start frothing at the mouth and like getting the bloodshot eyes and the cold sweats, and you don't feel anything. People try to strap you down and you literally don't feel anything because you've described your characters as being like bony and having like an 8 strength, but really on paper your strength is like 17, right? Because that's from the palsies or the pain that racks through your body where you're just screaming out and you're just like, yeah. I mean, you could have some fun in trying to. I think I would have fun in reflavoring character class options, like, oh, I have a feat that alertness feat, but it's not because you're alert, it's just because you're paranoid because you keep seeing things in the corner of your eye all the time. Yeah. Charlie says, Squared says, I call Charlie Squared. It's actually Charlie, but whatever. Charlie says, I can save your family member, but they will be my servant in undeath. Oh, hell yeah. Hell's yes. Maybe those valiant knights that have been defending the countryside against the ever-growing threat of the disease. Maybe those knights come back after yet their 5th battle or something, and the 5th campaign, and they're hurt and maybe they're suffering. They've got like pus-filled bumps and they're vomiting, and the people are like, but these are our defenders of our land. And maybe, just maybe, the knights are like, no, we need to put me on the battlements and I will serve even until death and beyond, I will serve to protect the community. And then the people start wrapping them in like mummified wraps and using oils on their bodies and stuff to keep the rot away. And their loved one, it starts to maybe even lose a little bit of their speech. They can't remember things, but they pick up their weapons anyway, and they start walking to the back to the front line, standing upon the castle walls, and and eventually you could actually see their ribs through their body. That'd be a great explanation for, um, and what I feel would always be a great explanation for, like, how can you make a air quotes good necromancer? Maybe it's not them. Maybe it's a cultural shift of like, we're holding against the onslaught, the tide of disease and plague that's coming towards us, and maybe those knights become the loyal undead that serve the community. And then it becomes, then culturally, the next generation, they're like, you know what, when I die, I want to become one of these people. I'll sacrifice my life to defend my loved ones, even until death. That's what my body's for. I will sacrifice my body for this. You martyr your soul to become one of the undead. Yep, they become Sir Robert Strong from Game of Thrones. Yeah. Oh man. What a great. I think it would be awesome. Hey, good morning there, blind lurker. I appreciate you being here. You are always welcome as well. And we're talking about world building using, yep, the vow of silence. Yeah, yeah. We forget, as bad as the mountain was, that the mountain actually took the vow actually took a vow of silence. That's why I didn't speak. I mean, there's other reasons for that. In the television show, like, well, maybe he just can't really act that well, which is all right. But also, there was a vow of silence. And who's to say that, like, what we today, because of science, we consider them to be, um, like we brought up snake oil salesmen and fake preachers and things. But what if in this world, um, the wives' tales of keeping a thing at bay is a realism? What I mean by that is, the burning of incense, the speaking of a mantra, the I'm calling it genuflecting, the idea of using your hands to enact something, a ritual or an honorific or something to keep the evil spirits away. Maybe that works in this world. Maybe a vow of silence is a thing that allows you to cross the land of the infected dead. And because to what's a good reasoning? To to to, to speak is to bring, of course, you could say to speak means breathing in something, and then of course you get sick. But maybe it's something more intrinsic than that in terms of magic. Like, to speak aloud is to call forth the evil spirits, and we all know evil spirits are diseases, right? So to keep your mouth shut and shut up, to walk through this region, maybe, just maybe, they will stay away from you, right? So what does that mean? Well, of course, your fighters and rangers and stuff might be like, fine, or rogue is like, I'll keep my mouth shut, I don't care. But your wizards are like, tap, tap, tap. I've got verbal component spells that I can't use while I'm in this region. And you guys know me, I love that kind of stuff, right? It's like, well, sure, if you want to go through this land of the dead or something, sure, maybe that's it. May I suggest, before we get out of here, for those who don't know, there is a game called Degenesis that I've absolutely positively fallen in love with. I don't own any stock in the game or anything, but Degenesis Rebirth is now being re-released as um, essentially as a Kickstarter of sorts. Not it isn't on Kickstarter, but is being released as Kickstarter. It's being re-released, and that game is for free. There's over 700 pages of absolutely beautiful art and layout and world. And because I was going to talk about this on Future Friday, where in this game, in the Genesis game, it's a post-apocalyptic world where meteor strikes have hit Earth. Basically, they've hit uh, most of Europe and the Mediterranean and send out these spores, and it's like diseases and things like that are rampant, and they've taken that to the nth degree. It's really creative. I have to say, it's hard to get through reading it, but it's really creative. Legally Blind says, burning sage around the border of a house. Yes, burning sage. What is it? Salt is another thing. Um, uh, uh, Legally Blind Lurker says they may be blind but have super hearing. Any noise and they are on you. Yeah. I brought up the zombie movie Train to Busan, and in the Train to Busan, they made the zombies. The zombies had to hear you in order for them to go berserk and go after you, because these were rage zombies, right? There's the slow walkers and the fast walkers. These were the runners. These were the fast runners. And there's some pretty good imagery in it where there's like they're literally like stumbling over top of each other and stuff. It's pretty cool, the imagery in that movie. But yes, that very much, like when the train would go through tunnels, it got dark, and when it got dark, the zombies would just like they would be right next to you, and they would just like look around like, oh, I can't see, I can't see. And maybe the disease isn't just one disease, but it has, or let me take this back. Fantasy, role playing, the disease, there's one disease that has different side effects, like Legally Blind Lurker brings up. Um, Maybe they are blind or very nearsighted. They can't really tell. They can hear you, maybe sense your presence, but that's about it. Um, Acoustic Solution. Hello there. Welcome to the show. Maybe they're an Acoustic Solution. The name is appropriate, talking about a disease that makes people go blind, but they can hear you and they're like completely enraged. Maybe there are other side effects, like in rage zombies, they become very strong and immune to harm, or they're able to spew out some kind of fluid or gas or particulates that are very disease oriented, or acidic, or burn the skin, as in like fire, or something like that, paralytic. It could be like, maybe there's all these different kinds of things. um Charlie Squared says, zombies could only go berserk at the sound of speech. Another reason for a vow of silence. Yeah, yeah. And who's to say that we're talking fantasy, right? So who's to say that you have to be limited to zombies? Maybe there's a transformative effect to it, like um, the body mutates, but the face and skull and spine remain the same. So maybe they transform into like given a long enough period of time, they transform into harpies or manticores or sphinxes, or what's naga? What's something else with a human face and a monstrous body? Hell, you can make up anything. Trolls. You guys know I love like classic mid-level creatures and stuff, right? Medusa. Ooh, Medusa. Pelor's like my ex-wife. Ooh, boom, boom, bad, bad Pelora. But that was a hot take right there. Yeah, Tesla Ranger pops in the thing about Train to Busan, and yes, Dead Man. The Genesis has 14 books. All have free downloads. Oh my God, that is. I can't speak highly enough of the formatting of the Genesis. Mind you, it's made by the Genesis is made by a design house, but yes. Um, yes, Acoustic Solution. We are talking about tabletop. We go live Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. EDT my time, and we do nothing but talk about tabletop role playing games. So yeah, and we go live. We're live on Twitch, YouTube, and our Discord server. So yes, and you are more than welcome to join. It may not be your thing, which is fine, but good to have you there. And yes, I do respond to any and most, if I can, to comments that are put in by you guys, right? Because that's what makes this great. So, lastly, before we get out of here, when it comes to using pandemics, yeah, I'm sure this is it. This is in 40K. When it comes to using pandemics and diseases in your role playing games, the if you feel like your world or setting is getting a little bit boring, or you want to do a one off, um, no, sorry, acoustic. No, sorry, no, it's not about video gaming. No, it's pen and paper, tabletopping, dice rolling, or now online gaming. That kind of thing. But yeah, sorry. Although virtual tabletop is it's climbing pretty close to video game development, but it's not quite there yet. Uh, yeah, Charlie's brings up the manticore. I love manticores. They're not used too often, but I don't know, something about them. Manticores have that like monstrous, smart. They have a little bit of everything, right? They fly. They're strong. They do a lot of damage. They can throw spikes and things. Yeah, all that kind of stuff. Pelor's like Mountain Dew and Doritos. We can end on the Mountain Dew and Doritos. You're going to need that to survive the the oncoming apocalypse. You need the Doritos for some nutrients, and the Mountain Dew to get the damn Dorito powder out of your teeth and off your fingers, right? But anyway, guys, tomorrow, of course, this entire week we are talking pandemics in role-playing games. Tomorrow is Third Pillar Thursday. You know me, Third Pillar of Exploration Thursday, where we talk about all things environmental when it comes to the pandemic. What will we be talking about? Not really certain. You guys know, talk off the top of my head, but I have a few ideas. And then, of course, we have Future Friday, where most likely we'll be bringing up the Genesis as the RPG and some other things as well. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining me. I am your dreaded DM, DBJ. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great and safe and productive day. Thank you very much for watching. I am out.